Oh, yeah, got it. That's it. You got it.
You got it. Okay, so let's get started.
Oh, sorry, Wallis, one thing. Can you make me a co-host?
Yeah, certainly. Lovely. Okay, so welcome everybody who's just joined. I'm now going to hand you over to our first guest, who is Sally Lemsford. So without any further ado, welcome, Sally.
Hello, I'm Sally. Do I share my screen straight away?
Yep, you can start sharing it now.
Right. Okay, so you can all see it?
We can.
Right. So.
Perfect.
Okay, are we right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna look at my time. So I'm Sally Lemsford and I'm a storytelling artist, and I make zines and have the In Case Zine Library with Megan Dunford. I'll talk about that a bit more. But I also make short films of tiny acts, which are very short performances, very, very small ones, and generally about social justice. So these are threads that go through my work, and I wanted to tell you how I have got to this point. So I go back quite a long way, and then these are themes that are running through, which I hope will explain what I do now, why it's like what I do now. So I'm interested in images and words together, and how that they intersect with films and zines. And I'm not a trained filmmaker, and my films are generally mostly less than a minute long. But I'm also interested in how they work in space and time. And there's always a story element to it. So that's my diagram of what I think I do, and I hope that explains a little bit. So I'm going back to when I was 5, and my toys, I didn't have many toys, but I loved paper and pens and paper and scissors and glue, and these are a couple of what I think of as early zines. And I've always been interested in pop-up things and bits that come out and fold outs and fold ins. And this is when I was 6. And my dad was an architect, and my mum used to type up the specification, and that's what I used for the paper. That's the paper for the scrapbook. I called it scrapbook then, but it's very early stuff. So again, space and time and paper, and the spaces round things were really important. This is when I was at college, at Bradford Art College, and I did a lot with paper. And I've recorded it because the action of turning pages is very significant to what I do. A photograph just doesn't do it right, really. And newspaper as an image rather than reading the text, that's important. The very first film that I had any help with, this is it. This is only a clip of it. And it's important because the noise of me running and filming is part of the film. Repeated bits in the editing is important. I don't have a first degree in art. I did an OU degree with social sciences, which underpins all that I do, and an MA in curating at Dartington. And I posed as a tourist and stopped people and asked them where the art was, and produced this leaflet that went in the tourist information, and it was based on their information sheets, and people assumed I was a tourist and told me all sorts of things that they considered to be art. Again, images and words. I collaborated with another artist, and we cycled around the Peak District with our fantasy museum and asked people to tell us fantasy stories, but they wanted to tell us the truth. So all the stories that, some of them were pictures, some of them were words. They were all things that really happened. Well, we assume it really happened. And this was when there was a cycle race going around the Peak District. Did a guided tour in Liverpool as part of the Free University of Liverpool. And we all, I designed different roles for people. So we had map maker, we had logger, we had interpreter, we had guide, and then we had little cards with names on, and we put them up as if they were blue plaques, and invented the backstory and created a document with that in. And I didn't know Liverpool, and the other people did, and they told me stories about Liverpool, but I don't know if they were true or not. They could have made them up. That was part of what happened. Went on a day to South Shields and drew as we went on the train and went on the ferry and moved around South Shields and back again. So I think that was perhaps more zine-like. And then a day at Firmin Woods using a car magazine and talking to people and writing on the magazine and tearing bits off and adding bits on. In 2013, I did a residency at Chesterfield College, and I talked to students and staff and asked them for advice for creative people, and produced this hand booklet. And I wanted to call it Pointers because I also went to the life drawing and drew hands, and gave a group of students a yellow piece of paper to draw a finger. And one of the classes I was in, somebody said, "What's the point?" And I thought that was a much better name than Pointers. In 2012, I got really upset because the Olympic torch didn't go through our borough. It skirted round, and it went through, they said it went through 90-something% of places, and it didn't go through our borough at all. So I designed this festival, and it was called the Flaming Skirt because of the flame. I flame because I was cross, and it skirted. And while the torch was going round the borough, outside of the borough, we did workshops. We made things in the gutter by a canal. We had miniskirt sports. We had dressing up musical chairs under a railway bridge. We had a great time. And I thought it was a one-off, but people said, "Well, why don't you do another one?" So the next time we had a bus, and the bus was one of the venues as well. And this image is from the third one in Northwest Leicestershire and Derbyshire. And I created this quite a big zine with another person. So the one layer is the map, then there were images, then there was drawings I did, and the yellow is the timeline. And we interviewed one of the oldest people and one of the youngest people, and that's the text for the piece, for the zine. In 2018, Megan Dunford and I created a day to get artists together, and we gave them lots of words and asked them to write a ransom note about the arts and what they want to change. And so that's one, and we printed it up and made a zine. We also did a Pekakucha, and I gave, for my 6 minutes, gave them a collaged sheet. They all had a different one, and asked them to redact some of the words and create a story. And the right-hand zine is, we had a dinner party where we worked out ways to raise money to keep us going. The top right is a workshop with a zine for things that might be of use to artists, so an artist toolbox. And the other one, the Old Vessels, New Recipes, is we had an online dinner party where people were asked to choose a plate and a new recipe, make the food, and then we all ate our own food on Zoom and told stories about the plate. And then the usherette, I went to the Social Works Live in Manchester and sold the zines dressed as an usherette. Then came lockdown and I had to reinvent myself. So Meg issued me a challenge to do 100 zines in 6 months. And these are some of the lockdown ones with the themes of lockdown. And I've recorded it rather than photographs because turning the page is really important. The paper that it's on, my dad learned how to use computers when he was 80, and he loved photocopying and printing off. And whenever he put it, so he used a lot of cartridges, and he had a whole pile of printer test sheets, which he tore in half to use for lists and shopping and notes. So that's the basis of the zines, and that's his writing is in there. And that's two little birds. It's on the printer test sheet. And that's why they're all strange shapes, because that's how he ripped them. I think in lockdown, I probably at times got quite frustrated. And the zines were a great way of expressing that. That's when we've been in lockdown for quite a while. Oh, that was a photocopy of his daffodils. And some of the distorted prints that he made. The empty chairs was a theme for me, and staying at home, having no visitors. My dad was called Bob. Some of the little drawings are his as well, little on scraps of paper. I was very struck that the cat could come and go, but we couldn't. I also asked friends and family to make a collaborative zine. So I called these co-zines, and I did this with an artist called Ola Wilson. We both made a textile, cut them in half, and swapped halves. So there's only 2 editions of this, and mine doesn't match hers. Well, it probably goes with it, but it's not identical. So I did quite a bit of stuff by the post. And building up a bank of zines, I wanted a home for it, and I tried to get somewhere in Bridport for it, but nobody would. They were all scared of it, and they wouldn't take it on. Well, I don't know why they didn't want to have it, but I couldn't find a home, so I'd been carrying it around in the case. to find the home, and that's where it stayed. So we called it Just In Case Zine Library, and we take it on tour, and it's been on tour to Plymouth, Portsmouth, Newbury, Andover, and we've got other places for it. This zine was, I did the ration challenge, and I was really struck by the pale food and wanted to eat off coloured plates. And this is what I was talking about, the actual performance of turning the pages on a zine is important to me. I collaborated with an artist in Sheffield about pockets of time others have. And getting heard and being listened to. Before lockdown, I did quite a bit of stuff in the street, but then with lockdown, you can't go up and talk to people in the street. So I have to think of other ways of doing things. So conversation, how to have a conversation in another way. And finally, there's two of my tiny acts, which are less than a minute long, and relate to some news. I do one a week, and it relates to the news in the week. And this was about the government harping back to old ways of doing things. And this first one.
Oh yeah, if you haven't got a code, you've got a green or any side of the
And the next one, this is the last one. And this was, well, it's self-explanatory, I hope. So I think of the tiny acts as being like zines in motion, action zines. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sally. That was brilliant. There's lots of comments in the chat, so please do have a look. Does anybody have any questions for Sally? I would like to ask, I mean, there's so much movement in your zines, and obviously you make film as well. So there's this sense of life that's in all of your work. And it feels very much like it's, you know, it's a discourse, like you're reflecting on what's happening, and you're having new ideas inspired by what you're seeing around you, and you're engaging other people in that process. So I'm wondering if you've ever encountered, or if there's anything you could share with us about something that you've created that's then kind of created a new life in itself, or kind of taken you off on a new narrative, or you've had some, you know, a response that's then gone back into the artwork in a way.
I think the tiny acts particularly, because when I first started doing them, we're now up to 49. So I've been doing it for 49 weeks. There's 2 of us that do it, not together. We're in different parts of the country. But to start with, I wanted an audience. I wanted people to see this. And people in Derbyshire would have always been nosy and wanted to know what I was doing, but people don't seem to ask me here. And I thought, oh, nobody's taken any notice. But now, 49 weeks on, I think I almost don't need people to look at them. So what I do is very different. And the one I did this week, I did in my house. I didn't do it, and I needed to do it in my house. And I post them on Instagram. And the other person I've talked to, and we've talked about the choreography of performance and the space that we now need to devise what we do and perform it. And it's very different from when we first started. So it has changed what we do. And I think the zines as well, I think they've changed a lot. Yeah, and also, yes, the fact of the lockdown ones, I was doing, sometimes I did 3 a week. And so that changed over time, that fed back into it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I was just interested what your response to that question would be, because I think it's, you know, it feels like such interactive work.
Well, somebody said they'd like to see it on a big wall, and Michelle Woolley, who's the other artist that I do the tiny acts with, we both would love to be in a space where she could do her stuff and I could project mine. So we've been talking about this for quite a while, but it's not happened yet. I've got another question.
We have, yes, Zara is asking, do you see much of a difference between artists' books and zines?
I think that it's very blurred, isn't it? And I think I've done the zines which are on my dad's computer test paper, the printed test paper, which is only an A4 folded in half, but I've also done one with lots of pages. And I think I like the small ones. The ones with lots of pages, which I think are more like artist books, they're bigger things. Whereas the zine, if I'm feeling really passionate about something and I need to get it on paper, I can do that with an A4 folded in half quickly. Whereas if I was, it's got to have lots of pages, it'd take a lot longer. And I like that quickness and that smallness. And that's what I like about the tiny acts. Some of them are only 20 seconds long. The one I did yesterday was only 20 something seconds long.
Brilliant. Sally has asked, any materials you haven't used yet and wish to? Set in resin, bigger scale?
Well, when I went to art college in Kingston, it was a fine art course, and everybody else was building boards and hiding themselves away in painting. And I just wanted to break up this, almost like, it was like a prison. So I built things and knocked them down. And I think that's where my performance started. And I wanted to get people's attention. So I think setting things permanently is less appealing to me. I like the really temporary things. I like the really throwaway things. I like guerrilla things. I like things that yes, are not. I like the unexpected, and I think I do like artist books, but I think that's the other end. It's a continuum, and that's the other end, and I'm on this end, I think.
Yeah. And Carrie's asked a question. When you say we, Carrie'd be interested in your process of collaboration and how it differs from the work you create by yourself. I think the collaboration involves a lot of conversation, and maybe the stuff on my own is a conversation with myself. But I think that's the difference, is that the conversation is really important before and during and after. And some of the collaboration, the tiny acts, we're collaborating, but we're in parallel, and there are connections between us, but they're separate.
and I'm interested in that way of doing it as well. But I think it's all wrapped up together.
Yeah. Esther's got a question. She's saying, thank you, Sally, brilliant to see your work. Could you tell me more about the Just In Case Zine Library? What kind of events you do to go with it, and do you go with it and perhaps do a talk?
Well, we thought about applying for things, and then we decided that because I now live in Worthing and Meg lives in Gloucester, so we thought about meeting up halfway, and we thought, well, instead of applying to things, let's make contact with people. So we approach people and say, can we bring the library? And so that's it. The tour is not people commissioning us, it's us going out there and saying, we've got this, can we come? So we've been to conferences, we've been to galleries, we're open to going anywhere. We really are. We did a zine workshop in a library in Andover on the Jubilee weekend, and we had 150 people contribute to this zine, to this.
Wow.
That was a collaborative zine. And what we did was people made their own page, and then we photocopied it, and they took away their own page, and we made a zine from the photocopies as a zigzag. So that was a lovely piece to do, and they were all ages. And yeah, in fact, we were packing up and somebody said, oh, can I join in, please? So we couldn't get out for such and such a time. No, I want to do it, please. Oh, come, please. So that was
Wow.
so open to offers. We'd love to take it all sorts of places.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sally. I think just from the questions and the way you've answered them, it's clear that you could actually talk to us for hours about all the things. So you've done so many really interesting projects. I'd like to see a feature film on you, basically. But that will be I think that's it for now.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Sally. Brilliant. Okay, so now we will go straight on to the next guest. And who did we say we go second? Was it Shanti?
It's me.
Yes, lovely. Everybody, please welcome Shanti Rai.
Hello. I'll start sharing my screen and then I'll introduce myself. Yeah, cool. So hi, I'm Shanti Rai. I'm an illustrator and a graphic novelist from London. I've been drawing for about 10 years and been making comics for that whole time as well. So I published a few comics myself, like self-published before uni and during uni, but then Sennen is my book that's out now, which is like my first proper full-length published thing, published by Avery Hill. And yeah, my Instagram, my website are there if you want to check those out later, but I'll put them later on in the slideshow as well. Yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about Sennen and about the process, my process, and the ideas behind the story as well, to give you kind of more info on it. So I have note cards, I'm very prepared. So my uni thesis comic was Co, and it was this story which was like an exploration of tropes and archetypes in folklore and stories all across the world. I'm really, really fascinated by the concept that human beings, no matter where we are, have the same core tropes in our stories. Like you can boil every story down to the same 12-ish character types and the same few storylines. There was actually this really fantastic database called the Arne Thompson Uther database of folktales and mythology. I don't think it's online anymore, but you might be able to access it through an archive. But they compiled like folk tales and fairy tales and stories from all over the world and sorted them into categories like based on what the main themes were, which I just loved. So for my thesis comic, I made this kind of culmination of all the things that I'd learned. I wanted to create my own fairy tale, which was new but also extremely familiar. because it's something that we kind of all know already from all the stories that we consume from the time we're children. But I find something like really comforting about the fact that we're connected to people like throughout time and across cultures and countries and things like that. So yeah, that's like an important theme for me still. And then in 2018, I was chosen as one of the 6 to watch from Broken Frontier. And through that, I got asked by Avery Hill to pitch a comic to them. And like I knew I wanted to tell a story which involved the kind of folklore-y things that I'd learned at uni while I was doing my thesis comic. But I also wanted to make a sort of modern fable, and this is where Sennen comes in. So these are actually like images from the actual pitch that I made. I had this this idea that I wanted to use like a lot of the like when I was researching all the folklore and stuff, I found a lot of Old English and Old European traditional costume and things. It's still around in like Green Man festivals and things, and you'll see it in another slide. But yeah, it's kind of stuff that we've lost through time, a bit of English culture. But yeah, this is Sennen. She lives in a valley that's surrounded by mountains, in a town by a lake, and she's lived there for her whole life. And she has lived with the same people, and she spends her days working. And I think her age is vague and kind of mysterious even to me, but somewhere in the teens, the early teens. And yeah, it's kind of like a coming of age thing that I'll talk about later too. But also the thing about their culture, which is kind of ever present, is that they're watched by these gods that live in their world. And yeah, these are my slides for some of the villages and also for said gods. Like everyone in her society worships and prays to these gods, and they obey them, and the gods ask them for sacrifices of food. So they're constantly growing food and harvesting it. It's like a constant summer where they live. So they're always growing food year round and working. Everybody works. The kids work, the adults work, and the gods sometimes ask for sacrifices of people too. So there's this really intense saturation of this kind of fear in everybody who lives in this world. But yeah, a lot of my research for the gods, for like what I wanted the design to be, was from this fantastic book called Wilderman by Charles Fraser or Frigger. I really, really recommend checking it out because it's fantastic. There's so many things that I learned that I didn't know existed in terms of like the fantastic culture, like pagan related culture, that people still participate in lots of pagan festivals and dress up in all these ways. So yeah, I took a lot of inspiration from that. Yes. And so yeah, I thought I'd put the first few pages of Sennen in here so you can kind of get introduced to the character. Sennen's very headstrong, so she lives in this world where she has to work every day and she's being watched all the time, but she doesn't like it and she's trying to fight back against that slightly. And so she does that in small ways by being disobedient or questioning things where she shouldn't probably question things. I don't know if I should pause so you guys can like have a little read if you want to.
Shanti, would you mind reading the words out for us?
Okay. I can do that. I can't promise that my voices will be great because, okay, but just go with me. Okay. Sennen, huh? Ooh, something's in the way. Okay, well, I can't read the top one because there's a bar in the way. Oh, what is this doing in here? I put it in there. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with... At least that was the last of them. See you at the procession. You're lucky I caught that. Imagine if I'd sent the bad ones off. Ugh, does it even matter? you think the gods will be impressed if we don't provide a good harvest? I honestly don't think the gods will care if the carrots are a little wonky. Smack. Ouch. You're lucky that's all you're getting. Now get down to the docks with you. There's not long left. Fine by me. And then there's a little song, a little earworm song that Sennen got stuck in her head. I actually wrote a tune for it so that I was humming it in my own head. And it's very annoying when it gets stuck in there. But yeah, so this is the kind of town that she lives in. It's very bright and colourful, and just because that's my vibes, I don't know if you can tell. And there's this giant mysterious tree right at the corner of the screen that is in the middle of the lake. That's kind of a hint for things that come later. I don't want to give too many spoilers for the book because it is quite twisty, and there are things that you find out later on. So I'm going to try and speak around it a little bit when it comes to my process and things like that. But yeah, you can kind of get an idea of the gist of it. So yeah, for me, Sennen is a coming of age story that very similar to my coming of age, which was realizing the world that we live in. So I'm half Bengali and half English. And when I was 10, I went to Bangladesh. And for me, that was kind of the first time seeing extreme poverty in a way that I'd never seen poverty before. You know, children living on the streets, children collecting rubbish so that they could sell it for like a few taka, children working. And I actually made a film with my mum to try and raise money and awareness for this charity, CSKS, who work with street children to train them, give them skills so they can go on to get jobs in factories and things like that. But kind of seeing children this age working towards working in a factory or doing woodworking or doing ironworks, it was just something that I had never experienced. I've been able to have quite a free childhood, free of having to do labor basically. And like, because of being Bengali, you know, my dad had always told me your clothes are made in Bangladesh. Like, look at every label in any shop you go to, everything's made in factories in Bangladesh. So I knew that, but this was the first time I was seeing it with my eyes. And I kind of realized the exploitation that goes on in the world so that I can live a nice life in London. And then also the contrast is made even starker by the fact that on my English side of my family, they're quite middle class and well off, and kind of me being stuck in the middle of it and seeing these two extremes. That's something that I really wanted to explore in a way in Sennen. So without giving away the twists of anything, you know, Sennen is working from a very young age, and it's for people who maybe don't realize what's happening. And so yeah, I don't know, I think everybody has this kind of realization at a certain point, but for me it happened at this age, and it's such a vivid memory that I kind of yeah, so I think that for kids reading Sennen, they might also have that kind of thing, but also for adults, because I think it comes to everyone at different times where you kind of sit with yourself and go, wait a second, I'm actually quite lucky, the fact that I've got access to all of these things, but my luck is dependent on someone else's unluckiness, kind of thing. Yeah, so that's one of the big themes. And then I want to just let you in on my process a little bit because I thought it was interesting. I don't know. For me, I really enjoy working digitally. I think one of the main things for me is I like the freedom of being able to make mistakes and experiment and try things, especially with color, because color is so important to me in the way that I work. So like with these frames of Sennen, I would have gone through millions of colors just to find the perfect ones. But I do enjoy that feeling of pencil and paper and kind of having a physical sketch in front of me. So I tend to, if I can, draw everything out so that I can see it in front of me first, and then I'll scan it and do the line work and the colors digitally and stuff. But yeah, when I first started Sennen, I think it was just out of uni. I just graduated in 2017 and I started in 2018. I had like just been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and so I was a bit tired and had a little bit of pain, and it was bad, but it wasn't, I didn't realize that it could get worse. So when I started, I was incredibly optimistic. I was like drawing everything out in pencils, incredibly detailed, and I was like, yeah, this will be done in 9 months or a year and it will be fantastic. And I ended up missing the first deadline and then missing the second deadline, and the third deadline I rushed it and it was terrible, and it was only like 30 pages long. And then by the end, I was doing like really rough sketches digitally just to kind of get it out there. But you can kind of see my process there as well. Like I tend to be I have quite a vivid idea in my head of what I want. And so my sketch and my main thing, I don't really put much detail into my sketches, as you can see. And then I'll just kind of do the lines immediately, which really frustrates some of my Illustrator friends. They're like, what do you mean? Like, how can you go straight in with like felt tip pen? But yeah, that's just the way that I work. And I guess that's it. I have no idea how long I've been talking for, but if you guys have any questions, I'd be thrilled to. And here's where you can buy Sennen if you're so inclined. It looks like this. Yay!
Brilliant, thank you, Shanti. We do have time. I think that was kind of exactly right, if not a bit shorter actually. So we've got plenty of time for questions, and we have one from
question.
Eaming. Oh.
Excuse me. Like what does your like script look like? Because you're writing it for yourself, correct?
Yeah. To be honest, it's usually like scribbled on a bit of paper like this, and it's vaguely like and sometimes a voice note in my phone, and then I just go straight in. I just type in the dialogue on the page and then see what fits. I always do the dialogue first and then kind of draw around it, and then just find out what fits. Very, very annoying to collaborate with, I think, which is probably why I work best on my own, because I don't often have a plan. It's just very free flowing. I think that goes also with being chronically ill. You kind of have to do bits and pieces when you can and not necessarily be super organized. So it works.
Yeah.
There's a question here from Eaming. Do you find Joseph Campbell's mythology studies comforting or challenging as you create your own mythology?
I mean, I find mythology in general very comforting. I find the whole idea, I find all stories comforting, but especially the ones that have been around for a really long time. I think there's something about just knowing that people hundreds of years ago listened to the exact same stories that you did, and that they've been like passed down and things like that. And then also, I don't know, I find it so interesting as well what other people's takes on mythology and stuff are as well. Yeah. I hope that was vaguely coherent.
Are you into Jung, like the Jungian archetypes? Is he an influence?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't remember much of it now because my brain's made of Swiss cheese, and so I don't hold memories very well. But I did do a whole paper on Jung when I was at uni, because of the archetypes, and that's where I got a lot of inspiration for Co from. And then with Sennen, I think because I've kind of just been going with it, I've not stopped to think about which archetypes I use that much. Like I just did it, and then, but I if I went and looked right now, I'd be able to fit Sennen into, an archetype. I'd be able to fit every character into an archetype, and I love that. I love that your brain just does that when you create things. It's very nice. It's very comforting, again, that thing of being connected to other people in such an innate way.
So if you found that I think it was a book you said where somebody had compiled all the stories and all the myths and all the fairy tales and all the characters. You'd know where Sennen would go in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a database which isn't online anymore, which is the most tragic thing ever, because it was fantastic resource. Yeah, there'd be a subsection. There'd be like, you know, young female protagonist, and then there'd be like this plot, and it'd be subheadings, and you'd be able to sort of send right in there, which is like, I don't know, I quite like that. And I think it's just so impossible to create something new, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's quite a nice thing.
Yeah, well, there's infinite variety, isn't there, within what there is, I suppose.
Exactly. And also there's this one, I have this favorite fairy tale, which is like the trope of it. I remember that it's Arne Thompson Uther type 425A because I'm so into it, but it's this story it's often called East of the Sun, West of the Moon, or something like that. But it's about a creature, sometimes a polar bear, sometimes a different creature, who like is cursed by a witch and has to become a creature in the daytime, and then nighttime they turn into a man, and they have to find someone who will love them. It's kind of like Beauty and the Beast, but it falls under a different category because there's a part where they have to make a deal with trolls and things like that. But there's literally 6 versions of it written in novel form, and then some woodcuts. I can't remember who by, but I read all 6 versions. I'm obsessed with the woodcuts. I think, you know, yeah, I love it. That's my favorite one.
There's lots of lovely comments about your work, and earlier on I think it was Zara said she loves your colours, and Sally said that as well there, and you mentioned in your presentation that colour was really important to you, so I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about, you know, what your process is with colour, why you're, you know, what it means to you and how you use it.
The thing with colour is that for me, I don't really know. I've tried to think about it properly before, but some colours really, really appeal to me and some colours really, really don't. And some combinations appeal to me and some don't. I kind of just go with what feels right. But for me, it can kind of change the whole mood. So like I've done with Co, and I've done with Sennen, and I've done with other comics that I've made. I always like try and tie the colour to what's going on in the story. So like at the beginning of Sennen, when they're in the valley, the colours are quite, I mean, they're bright, but they're kind of more earthy tones. You know, it's more earthy. It's kind of based on, like back in the day before we had synthetic dyes, the kind of colours that you could make naturally and things like that. Obviously, slightly more intense because I just made them more intense. And then as you kind of go through the book and you enter like different zones, the colours become different. I think it's such a useful storytelling tool, because even if you're not necessarily picking up on it consciously, subconsciously, you'll be feeling different things based on the colours. It's that thing, like, you know, people tell you to paint your room certain colours and you'll feel different ways. It's so true, like you really do. It does really make you feel different ways. I have different colours that I like wearing on different days depending on what mood I'm feeling in, or like dyeing my hair, things like that. And I think the same is with this. It's the same exact thing with comics for me. I'll often pick up a comic I see just because I'm in a shop and I look and I'm like, oh, the colours, phenomenal. I need to read it, you know, it just calls to you. So yeah.
Thank you. I think we've got time for just 2 more questions, which we have here in chat. One is from your mum, and she's saying, you used your own growing up process to explain what led to your writing Sennen. Is she actually you? Would you like to be her?
No, because I would not like to be spending my life working in a field. But I think there's elements. It's impossible to write characters that are completely divorced from you. You know, every single one is going to be some part of my brain. Hopefully not the terrible ones, but the terrible ones, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, but I don't think she's actually me. I try to write from the opposite perspective of me. I think I've got quite I've had quite a privileged life, especially growing up in the UK. I've had access to free education and free healthcare for my whole life. And I've never really, you know, I've never really had to work to survive. You know, like there's always a fallback in this country. You know, you won't. I mean, it's getting worse and worse, but it's generally very different to other parts of the world where you are truly on your own. And so I think that's kind of the perspective of trying to write Sennen from.
If okay, so Sennen's external reality is very different to yours, but would you say there was something internally maybe that was similar? Would she be you if your life was different?
Yeah, I think definitely some of the sarkiness and stubbornness is me, and that like kind of constantly poking and questioning people and asking questions, and yeah, things like that is true. And that thing of her kind of realizing that the gods in her world might not be what they think they are. I had a moment like that, speaking of my mother, when I realized that Father Christmas wasn't real. and that was devastating to me. So yeah, there's a part of that in there, I suppose.
Okay, I think that is all we have time for questions wise. So thank you so much. You've got loads of great comments, so please do have a look. Wonderful. Okay, so we're now on to the final guest. Please welcome Taki Soma.
Hi, everybody. If it's okay with LDC, is it like, I want to ask like everybody to like, if they're comfortable to turn on their cameras. Because I'm a visual person, so I want to see y'all if you're comfortable before I start sharing. My name is Taki Soma, and I'm a cartoonist. And like Shanti, I had my book released recently through Avery Hill. And like Shanti, I also have chronic illness, multiple sclerosis. So we have a lot in common. The most recent book I'm talking about is called Sleeping While Standing. It's an autobiography told in like increments of 4 pages or less for each story. And I guess I will start sharing the pages if I can figure out how. Let's see. Boy, let's see.
Do you remember? Do you know how to do it? Shall I talk you through it?
I may know.
Down the bottom of the screen, there's a row of icons, and there should be one that says share screen. So if you click on that, and if you have your presentation open already, then your presentation will come up as a choice that you can select, and then it will just come up. There you go. Lovely. We can see it.
Okay, good. Okay. Let me see here. So is that showing as like as a whole, or I don't know?
We can still see kind of like the surroundings.
The surroundings.
So if you just do your what
I
you
don't
normally
know.
do.
I don't know how to like not have
Try
it be
view.
What happens if you click on view?
I'm sorry,
at
what?
the top?
View. If you go to view.
Yeah, go to the top left where it says view and click on that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Go to the
try
top
that.
again. And then full screen
Full
mode.
screen mode.
Got it. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So this one is called Toys. And I chose this one to kind of share the entire story with you, so you get an idea of what this whole experience is like in the comic. And Toys, obviously, it's not a toy, it's a cake. I know that. Is that showing a different page now, like my first page? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'll read it out loud. I didn't think I had the right to say anything. Holy cow. What is it? Taki at 3, Shige at 6. My brother got a remote controlled car. Can I try? Maybe later. I got puzzled and such inside a cartoon box. Following year, our parents threw my brother a birthday party with friends. Happy birthday, Shige. Oh, thanks, Taki. I began to imagine what will happen on my birthday. A party, cake, ice cream, and presents. They got me a toy vanity. You have too many toys. To be fair, it's not as if I didn't have any toys. I remember my Munchichi, Barbie, and her house, and I even had a pet bunny. I asked for Mickey once. My dad gave me Minnie. I wanted Mickey. Oh, but you're a girl. You're being ungrateful. Mom, why do you look angry? Your dad stole my money for your toy. Huh? What does that mean? Around that time, our dad disappeared for a while. When he finally reappeared, he showed up with bribery. My brother received a brand new bike. I got Pocky. He claimed he got hungry and opened it, so I got them wrapped in a napkin. Then I guess it was my mom's turn to disappear. When we finally reunited, she too got us gifts. I got a lunchbox. I filled it with my own crayons. My brother got a handheld Space Invader game. Mom, when Shige was sick, you got him magazines. And I was hoping that look, I know you like to eat, but we get candy when we're not sick. I thought maybe something special might be nice. You're being greedy. My 10th birthday was my first one with a new dad and in the States. Since both my brother and I are April babies, we decided to celebrate together. The cake had a baseball theme, my brother's obsession. It looked delicious. Sorry, Taki, we forgot to get you one. Wait, what? I didn't realize I deserved my own cake. I didn't ask for one. I ran to the bathroom to think, or rather to hide my stinging eyes. Did I deserve the same as my brother? Doesn't that mean I'm being self-centered? Hey, Tiger, I found your cake. Happy birthday. Don't cry, just don't. I think I blacked out when my dad brought out my own bunny cake. I just remember feeling overwhelmed with guilt and happiness, and my 10-year-old brain just exploded. Since my dad came into my life, the inequality in presence has stopped. And years later, as an adult, visiting my parents during the holidays, we feasted together and exchanged gifts as usual. I kept eyeing a box in a corner. Who was it from or to whom? Well, that one over there is yours. Do you want it? Do you want to open it? Are you serious? For me? A Hattori Hanzo sword from a movie we both love? I blacked out again. As I was heading home, my dad escorted me to my car as usual. By the way, your mom is mad at me that I got you that sword. I thought you'd like it, so there you go. But if you don't, I'll just keep it. No hurt feelings. I told him I'm keeping it. This gift came from his heart, and he bought it. He fought for me to have something he knew I'd enjoy despite my mother's opposition. It is my prized possession to this day, and I'll never part with it, ever. So that was Story of Toys. I decided to do 4 pages or less in these vignette style storytelling because when I started working on this, I didn't have any idea where it was going. I did the first story, which is called Box, and it's in the book. And it was just for me. I did it for me because I needed to do it. And after I did the 4 pages, I was like, oh, that felt really cathartic. It felt awesome, even though it was a really dark subject and a hard subject to like just really just live in and like draw and like really think about. So I'm like, well, I want to do more. But you know, I think keeping it 4 pages or less is something that I can handle. Any more than that, like you have to write it, you have to draw it, you have to color it. I mean, you're in it, you're living in it for so long that if you're, recounting your traumas, I don't want to live there that long. So, so I started making a bunch of like 4-page comics, and I had enough that my husband's like, maybe this is a graphic novel. Like, I think you have enough to just, you have enough stories that you could just keep going. Maybe it's a graphic novel. And I'm like, yeah, I think it is. So we approached Avery Hill and they picked it up, and yay, thank God. I picked it up. So yeah, so the rest is history. I just did the, I think I did like half of the book by the time I approached Avery Hill. So, but I also wanted to I wanted to like randomly just choose some pages and kind of talk about the process. Like here, this is a story that's called Adoption. It's about a story where my biological mother tried to like have me adopted away to her best friend, I think twice or 3 times. So it's a story about that. And in the gutters of the story, throughout the 4 pages, there are animals like you see here that I've adopted throughout my life, which I never really addressed, but it's just there, sitting there for the audience to see. So I thought it was a kind of a fun, heartwarming part of this kind of really messed up story. So there's that. This story is about, well, it's called Birth, and I talk about the different stories about my mother's birth, my brother's birth, and my birth, and all of it was just dependent on my grandfather having to make a very hard decision back when my mother was being born. So we're at this grave site and talking about that whole issue. So, it's about birth and life and death, I guess. So with that, this is from a story called Demon. I think it's self-explanatory what what we're looking at here. I think I encountered a demon, and there it is. It loomed over me as big as it seems here when I was a little kid, and yeah, so that was fun. This story is called Addict, and this is, yeah, I don't know, I guess I don't really have a lot to say, except it was very traumatic. This image is from a story called Murder, and it was about a murder that where I knew the victim and I knew one of the murderers. There were 3, and I only learned about the whole murder maybe a couple of years after it happened. And I talk about the impact of finding out about it, and that it is, to and like think back on a time when I used to know these people, and it's incredibly difficult to like remember these people and know that they've done these things or are gone because of this incident. And so I, that's what the story is about. This is called Darkness. It's a story that I came up with while I was working on the book, like actively working and like just churning out as many pages as possible. And a friend of ours pointed out that like he was like, you have a lot of like traumatic, dark stories in your comic, and I just, I don't want to tell you how to make your own comic, especially like auto-bio, but it's like, you're a really funny person, so maybe step back from the darkness so much. And I'm like, and so my husband and I here in this page is talking about like, well, I think he's right. I think there's just, like my book is going to be so dark, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to try to bring in some, heartwarming stories too. And I end up, saying like, well, because I haven't even gotten to the really dark ones yet. And I'm glad for that decision, because I probably could have gotten even darker and darker and darker. And it's just, who wants to read that? So there's that. This page is from, it's called Diagnosis. And this was a story about my multiple sclerosis diagnosis that I was chasing for years. I knew there was something really wrong with me and all of that stuff. But the way I approached the story, I didn't really want to talk about MS per se. I wanted to tell the story so that it's more relatable. And not everybody has chronic illness, not everybody has MS. So I thought about how can I tell this story, but to a point where people can really, really relate to it and really get in there and really feel the feelings. So I decided, well, I bet a lot of people probably have had experiences of going to a doctor's office and being dismissed, and I think that's pretty universal, and it has nothing against doctors or nurses or anything like that. I mean, we're all human, we all have good days and bad days and stuff like that. So this isn't about me talking crap about the health industry, but so that, and I think I'm gonna just stop sharing and like go with this questions, because I think we're out of time. And if possible, since most of you have videos on, if you want to just step in and just speak instead of putting it in a chat, that's totally fine with me too. So anybody? Well, we're done.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Because it is quite heavy material and it's based on like your own traumatic experiences, we going over all of that to kind of write a script and then draw the comic and then put it together in a book, was that like re-traumatizing for you, or did you find it in ways cathartic?
Both, definitely both. Each story, traumatic or not, they were all very cathartic. And when I have to approach a story by really, really editing my experiences to like 4 pages or less, it becomes more of a challenge of like math. So, you know, it's more mechanical. And I think approaching those memories that way was very helpful. So yeah, so it was very cathartic, but it was, yeah, it was also challenging, but yeah. Let's see.
Hi there.
Hi.
I asked a question, but I just got re-asked. But I have another one. How do you feel about the process of now talking about your work? Like it's very personal when you're creating it, but now that you're starting to think about putting it out into the world and publishing, is that daunting? And have you got any advice or ways of coping with that?
When it came out, like I think I was at peace. I worked through so much by doing this that when it finally came out, I was like, oh yeah, I've already done that. I've already gone through it. So it wasn't, you know, and I was pretty careful in not revealing things that wasn't for me to reveal, that involved other people. So I felt pretty confident that I didn't hurt, you know, the people that I didn't want to hurt. So yeah.
And what was your family's reaction, or did you try and keep them away from it?
My family's reaction, my immediate family, my mother and my brother. My mother probably haven't read the book, and I don't think she will. And my brother and I, we don't speak, so I don't know. Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. When you sort of like condense these experiences and stories down to 4 pages, are you ever surprised about the direction that those stories have taken?
Absolutely. Yeah. I learned so much about editing and killing your darlings, and you know, it was daunting, but it was so rewarding when I found a way to tell you know, a story that essentially should have been longer than 4 pages. But I kept thinking about, well, what's the important part? What's the point of the story? What do I want to say? You know, what, you know, and what can I edit out and still tell the exact same story, because I'm limited in what I can show and say. So yeah, I don't imagine doing this again with any other book, but I'm so grateful for what I've learned from just constricting myself from, you know, telling a story like longer than 4 pages. Let's see, I'm trying to read the questions here.
Gretchen's asked, does your published drawings are in color? Do you also work in black and white?
Right now, I am working in black and white a little bit. I wrote a graphic novel about Van Gogh, and my husband is the artist on it. And the story starts out like mostly black and white, and I'm doing all the gray tones. So yeah. But it's weird because I'm mostly known for like coloring. So it's a different avenue here.
Okay, is there any more questions? If somebody would like to type a question, if they don't feel like saying it into the camera. It's quite nice having the voices and the faces. No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for turning on your cameras and stuff. That really helped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Amazing work. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, all of you, all of our guests tonight, and everybody for coming along, asking your questions and being wonderful. Thank you all. And this is recorded, so it will be going up onto YouTube very soon. And Emma, is there anything else that we needed to add today?
No, but the next meetup will be on the 21st of November. It's a Monday, and Carrie, who's here tonight, is going to be one of our guests. She's turned off her camera, so she might be busy with babies and things. But Carrie, are you there? Carrie? No, okay. Anyway, but yeah, she will be talking about her latest book, and the other two guests yet to be confirmed.
Lovely, thanks, Emma. And apologies to everybody for the technical issues today, and everybody who's maybe not here and wanted to be here. Hopefully they'll just get my apology through the ether. But that's all for now. Okay, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Cheers.
Wallis.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, other
Bye-bye.
guests. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I need to save a chat, don't I, Wallis? How do we do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Good question.
How do you save the
know.
chat?
So I'm going to copy and paste
Save
it just in
chat.
case I don't
It's
figure out
three
another way.
3 dots on the bottom.
Save chat.
3 ducks. Ooh,
3 dots.
3 dots. Sorry. Ducks would be so
I've
much
done
better.
it. I've done it. I've saved it.
Done it.
I
Okay.
pressed it.
awesome.
Yeah. I just need to stop recording now as well. There we are.